Hey guys, how's it going? TJ here with Dead History, and today is part 6 of our presidential series. And yeah, you might be asking yourself, but wait a minute, that guy behind me, that's the 7th president of the United States, Andrew Jackson. The reason for that is, the 6th president, as we know, is John Quincy Adams. We did him in our second video in this series because we grouped him together with his father, John Adams, because John and John Quincy are buried right next to each other. So today, part 6 of our presidential series, we're actually looking at the 7th president of the United States, Old Hickory. And there's a lot of really cool, fascinating stuff that I get to tell you about Andrew Jackson. But first, before anything else, hit subscribe down below. Give us a like, thumbs up, leave those comments and questions, and of course, make sure you hit that little bell, that notification button, so you can know when we put out a video each and every week. And now sit back and relax and enjoy part 6 of our presidential series, Andrew Jackson. And this is Dead History. Hey guys, TJ back with you again, and yup, Old Hickory behind me, good old Andrew Jackson, the 7th president of the United States. And I got some really cool, fascinating things to tell you about Andrew Jackson. Like, did you know that he used to duel an awful lot, and he actually killed a man in a duel once? Yeah, and not only that, Andrew Jackson was the very first president where there was actually a presidential assassination attempt on his life. Yeah, he was the first one. Yeah, of course he survived, and he actually beat the guy up who tried to assassinate him. Really fascinating stuff. And then, of course, not to mention, he's the good old $20 bill, right? Well, you know what's really interesting about that? Andrew Jackson couldn't stand the concept of paper money, but now he's on our $20 bill. So we're going to get into all that really fascinating stuff. Again, do me a favor, hit subscribe down below, leave your comments and questions, give us a like, and of course hit that notification button, because here we go, part 6 of this presidential series, the 7th president of the United States, Andrew Jackson. Enjoy. Hey guys, TJ here with Dead History, and gonna jump right in. Welcome to part 6 of our presidential series, Andrew Jackson. Yes, Andrew Jackson is the 7th president of the United States. So some of you might be saying, hey, what the heck? He's not the 6th president, he's the 7th, but this is part 6. Yes, that's because the 6th president, John Quincy Adams, we actually did. We grouped him with his father, John Adams. So our second installment, the part 2 of our series, we did both John Adams and John Quincy Adams together. So I'll leave a link down below in the description of this video for that video in case you want to see it. But this is all about Andrew Jackson, so let's jump in. I don't want to make these videos too long. Listen, this is going to be definitely in 2 parts, and both parts are probably going to be in the 12 to 15 minute range. I know it's a little lengthy, but I just want to go over things. So here we go. Let's jump in. So, first thing, pretty cool thing, Andrew Jackson's parents, they emigrated from Ireland. Both of Jackson's parents, Andrew and Elizabeth, were their names. They were born in Ireland's country Antrim, or Antrim. It's the present-day Northern Ireland. And in 1765, they set sail for the United States with their 2 sons, Hugh and Robert. And the Jacksons settled with fellow Scottish-Irish Presbyterians in the Waxhaws region that straddled North and South Carolina. Basically, the Waxhaws region is a mountainous region in between North and South Carolina. Now, speaking of the Jacksons, and then, of course, Andrew Jackson, really interesting, no one really knows where he was born for sure. Both North Carolina and South Carolina lay claim to be his birthplace. But his birthplace is a mystery. Jackson himself, he claimed to be born at an uncle's home in South Carolina, but the common belief is that assertion was made to basically advance his political career, and evidence suggests that he was actually born in North Carolina. Jackson was actually the first to be born in a log cabin, that we do know. The seventh president was born on March 15th, 1767. But exactly where is disputed. As I said, the Waxhaws Wilderness was so remote that the precise border between North and South Carolina had yet to even be surveyed. In a 1824 letter, Jackson did write that he had been told that he'd been born in his uncle's South Carolina home. But, like I said, dueling historic markers in both states, North and South Carolina, they lay claim to be the actual true locations of his birthplace. Now, the cool thing is, well, this part is not cool. Jackson's father died in February of 1767. He was only 29. He died in a logging accident while clearing land, only 3 weeks before Andrew Jackson was born. Now, Jackson's mother and his brothers, they lived with Jackson's aunt and uncle in the Waxhaws region. And Jackson received schooling from 2 nearby priests in that region when he was old, school age. But again, his exact birthplace is unclear. And really, the reason for it is because of the lack of knowledge. No one really knows what his mother's actions were immediately after her husband died, Jackson's father. After his funeral, historians really don't know what his mother did. The area was so remote, as I said, that it hadn't been surveyed. In 1824, Jackson wrote that letter saying he was born on the plantation of his uncle James Crawford in South Carolina. But again, he could have definitely used that for political purposes. In the mid-1850s, actually, there was secondhand evidence that indicated that he might have been born at a different uncle's home in North Carolina, not South. So pretty interesting stuff. So, and again, as a young boy, Jackson, he was easily offended. He was considered kind of something of a bully. He was, however, said to have taken in a group of younger and weaker boys one time under his wing, and he was very kind to them. But the whole bully and kind of not nice thing that you'll find out in a bit here, that kind of, I guess, followed him for the rest of his life. So, but we'll get into that. So, pretty interesting, though. I mean, nobody really knows where the heck he was actually born. I mean, that's fascinating. One of our presidents, and, let's face facts, whether you like him or not, one of our probably more popular presidents, nobody knows for sure where he was born. So, some other fun facts. Andrew Jackson was actually really good friends with Aaron Burr. The former vice president, Aaron Burr, stayed for several days at the Hermitage. Hermitage is the plantation that Andrew Jackson owned and is buried at. You guys will see that later on. And Aaron Burr apparently spoke with Andrew Jackson about his plans to go on an adventure in the western states. I guess that never really happened, but that was Burr's plans. Jackson also was on the witness list for Burr's treason trial. Aaron Burr, of course, was in the most famous duel of all time, probably, when he was in a duel with Alexander Hamilton, where he shot and killed Hamilton. And then he went on trial, and Andrew Jackson was actually one of the witnesses for Burr during that trial. The two men, they served in Congress at the same time, but they were in different chambers, but that's when they became friends. And speaking of duels, Andrew Jackson was a renowned dueler. It's said that he probably participated in anywhere between 5 and 100 duels in his lifetime. And he actually killed a man in a duel once. He just kind of had this propensity to respond to, bad talk and bad-mouthing him and casting, bad mouth on his honor with pistols. That really kind of was his thing. It was like, hey, I'm going to shoot you. So, there was a man named Charles Dickinson who called Jackson a worthless scoundrel, a poltroon, a coward. He said these things in a local newspaper in 1806. And it was actually, supposedly the rumor goes, it was over horse racing bets was the original reason for the gripe and the little animosity they had toward one another. And Charles Dickinson also badmouthed Jackson's wife. So Jackson was furious with this, and he challenged him to a duel. And then during the duel, at the command, Dickinson fired, and he actually did hit Jackson in the chest. And the bullet missed Jackson's heart by like an inch, real close to his heart. And in spite of the really serious wound, Jackson stood his ground, he raised his pistol, and he fired a shot that struck Dickinson dead. That was it. Killed him right there. And actually, Jackson would carry around the bullet in his chest, as well as another from a subsequent duel for the rest of his life. Doctors could not operate to get that bullet out because of where it was, the proximity inside of his body. It was too close to his heart, so they couldn't do it safely and get it out. Pretty interesting stuff. So, he had quite the temper, and he settled them with duels an awful lot. Jackson, another fun fact, he won the popular vote for president 3 different times. He captured nearly 56% of the popular vote when he won the presidency in 1828, and he nearly matched that same figure 4 years later during his re-election. So pretty interesting stuff there. Now, he also won the most popular votes, but not a majority, in his first presidential run, which was actually in 1824. But since there was no candidate that won the majority of the electoral votes, the 1824 election was thrown into the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives selected John Quincy Adams. And Jackson's supporters in Jackson, they claimed it was a corrupt bargain with the Speaker of the House at the time, Henry Clay. Henry Clay was later named Secretary of State by John Quincy Adams and served in Quincy Adams' presidential cabinet. And in annual messages to Congress, Andrew Jackson repeatedly lobbied for the abolition of the Electoral College. He hated the Electoral College. He thought it was ridiculous. That is actually one thing I actually agree with Andrew Jackson on. I think it's silly too. I think we should go off the popular vote, but that's just my opinion, of course. Now, Jackson, he considered himself to be a Jeffersonian Democrat. However, Thomas Jefferson himself, he actually didn't like Andrew Jackson. He called him a very dangerous man, to be honest. So, kind of an interesting thing there. Jackson, he was known as like the voice of the common man. That's kind of what his whole like political platform that he ran on. He was, for the common man. Andrew Jackson, he detested the distinction of privilege. He really thought he was the voice of the common man. But, the reality is we really should not misconstrue this, because it doesn't mean that Jackson tried to find out where public opinion and popular opinion was, and then, to be guided by that public opinion. That's not what he did. Jackson knew always exactly what he wanted to do, and he just did it. He did not care. He did not, take public opinion into context and try to think it over. He basically would do what he wanted, and then he would try to enlist public support for what it is that he wanted to do. That was kind of what he did. He was really iron-willed. People would say he was even cantankerous. He was an interesting fellow. Basically, there's no in-between with Jackson. Either people loved him or they hated him. And that, that almost still holds true today. People either love him. I know right now our current president, Donald Trump, he idolizes Andrew Jackson. Actually, it seems like they have a little bit in common with some of the characteristics of each man. But, so, you either loved him or hated him. And he really tried to play into that whole he was for the common man thing. He has to be called General and not Mr. President. He chewed tobacco and he smoked a pipe, for all you pipe smokers and tobacco users out there. He was a notorious gambler. He actually brought his own racehorses with him to the White House. Just interesting. He was, what you would call a barroom brawler. He was a passionate Indian fighter. He had a very bad temper. He was known to basically throw tantrums. Like yell and scream and pound his fists, and he would do this to get his way. And when people would kind of clear the room, when there was other people left over in the room, he would say to them, yeah, they thought I was really mad. He would do this and put on these temper acts and temper tantrums to get his way. he really kind of was a disturbed person, probably. When you really look at it, he probably did suffer from some mental health issues, truly and honestly. He was very big on personal honor and pride. He would challenge anyone to a duel or a fight at the drop of a hat. It's just like he was just, that's who he was. Very interesting stuff. He also is the only president to actually have an age named after him. It was called the Age of Jackson. So he really was interesting, and there is a lot of lasting things, when it comes to Andrew Jackson. He was actually the target of the first attempted presidential assassination. As Andrew Jackson was leaving the U.S. Capitol one day on January 30th, 1835, following a memorial service for a congressman, a deranged house painter named Richard Lawrence fired a pistol at the president from just feet away. But Lawrence's gun misfired. And then Lawrence pulled out a second gun and squeezed the trigger, and that pistol misfired. So then at this point, a bunch of people subdued Richard Lawrence. Actually, one of them was Davy Crockett, believe it or not. He actually was standing there, and he grabbed Lawrence. And the rumor and the story is that Jackson was enraged by this, and he charged at Lawrence when he was being subdued with his cane, and he started beating him with his cane. So pretty interesting. Afterwards, a subsequent investigation found that the pistols were in working order, and the odds of both guns misfiring were 125,000 to 1. That's crazy, right? Nuts. Hey guys, TJ with Dead History here. I'm actually adding this in. Right now it is December 30th, 2020. I already have actually made the video and audio for the Andrew Jackson video this week, but I decided to take a drive a few hours down to Washington, D.C. today to add this in because I thought it would be really cool for you guys to see. Let me flip you around. I'm at the Rock Creek Cemetery in Washington, D.C., and right there, that is actually the gravesite of Richard Lawrence, the assassin who attempted to assassinate Andrew Jackson. Right here. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, it was actually on January 30th of 1835 when Richard Lawrence approached Andrew Jackson coming out of the Capitol building here in Washington, D.C., and attempted to assassinate him. He was actually arrested and then put into insane asylums, basically mental hospitals, for the rest of his life. I believe it was 1861. Let me see if I can see that. Yep, pretty sure that's what that says there. 1861 when Lawrence died, when he was a resident in an insane asylum. So he lived about another, 25, 26 years after the assassination attempt, and then he died, and they're not sure how old he was. He was either 52 or 53 years old when he died. He was born in England, actually, Richard Lawrence, so, quite interesting. There's not too many really spot-on records about when his birth was. They just kind of have the roundabout year that he was born in England, and then they think he was about 52 to 53 when he died here. I believe it was somewhere in Washington, D.C. is the mental hospital that he was at. So there you go, the Rock Creek Cemetery here in Washington, D.C., and a look at the assassin, the attempted assassin for the first ever presidential assassination attempt, Richard Lawrence. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoy. Unbeknownst to Jackson, he actually married his wife before she had been legally divorced from her first husband. So yeah, she fell in love with Jackson, and she was separated from her husband. But yeah, she wasn't legally divorced yet, and then they got married. So kind of just an interesting fun fact there about Jackson and his wife. He was actually the only president to ever be a former prisoner of war, POW. During the Revolutionary War, he was only 13 years old, and he joined the Continental Army as a courier. And then in April of 1781, he was taken prisoner along with his brother Robert. A British officer ordered Jackson to polish his boots. You know, he said, "Polish my boots, boy." And Jackson, the future president, refused. And this infuriated the British soldier. The redcoat drew his sword and he slashed Jackson's left hand to the bone, and he gashed his head, and it actually left a permanent scar on Jackson's head. And then later on, the British actually released both brothers after 2 weeks of ill treatment and captivity. And actually within days, Jackson's brother Robert died from an illness contracted when they were captured in confinement. So pretty interesting. Now, some of you might remember, of course, John McCain. John McCain was also a prisoner of war, and he ran for president but was never elected. So he would have became the second president if he was ever elected to be a prisoner of war. So, and then become president. So interesting. As I said earlier, Jackson was a notorious gambler. He just had this taste for wagering and putting wagers on anything, dice, cards, even on cockfights. As a teenager, he gambled away all of his grandfather's inheritance on a trip to Charleston, South Carolina. Jackson's passion in life was racing and wagering on horses. He loved horse racing. Hence, that's why he brought racehorses to the White House with him. He was just a big-time gambler. So, for all you gambling lovers out there, Andrew Jackson was your kind of guy. He loved it. As I said in my introduction, Jackson's portrait, of course, appears on the $20 bill, but he detested paper money. Basically chastened by a financial hit he once took from devalued paper notes. He once, basically had paper notes that were devalued. Jackson just opposed the issuance of paper money by state national banks. He hated it. He only trusted gold and silver as currency, and he actually shut down the Second Bank of the United States, in part because of its ability to manipulate paper money. So it's pretty ironic that Jackson, he not only appears on the $20 bill still to this day, but his portrait in the past also appeared on the $5 bill, the $10 bill, the $50 bill, and the $10,000 bill denominations. In addition, believe it or not, to the Confederate States $1,000 bill Andrew Jackson was once on. So yeah, I mean, pretty crazy stuff. Also, one of the funny stories about Jackson is he really did have a giant block of cheese at the White House. As it's been reported, Jackson received a 1,400-pound cheddar wheel as a gift in 1835, and he kept it in the White House lobby for 2 years before he left office in 1837. Yeah, it's interesting. There's actually a day, I believe it's in the end of January, the White House calls the Big Block of Cheese Day, and it's inspired by Andrew Jackson having this block of cheese in the White House. Very interesting. But people, they love Jackson, and they knew he loved cheese. So basically, they sent Old Hickory this enormous, wheel of cheese. So pretty interesting stuff. So that actually is a true story. I found that kind of interesting. So yeah, we're getting a little long here in this video. I'm going to end it here. Part 2, we're going to go over a little bit more facts about Andrew Jackson, and then we're actually going to take a look at Hermitage. The Hermitage is Andrew Jackson's plantation, and that is where he's buried. So we're going to take a look at that, and yeah, that'll be it. So thanks for joining part 1 of 2 of our presidential series, part 6, Andrew Jackson. Thank you for joining and subscribing and leaving your comments and everything. Stay tuned for part 2. Thanks, guys.